This is Dr. Liara Spencer of Magi Cultural Studies Division, continuing my research of the Dreamtime in the investigation into the possible ways of stopping Subject 1138. I'm settled in Darwin, Northern Territory, Australia. I'm here for two reasons. One is because Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians make up about 30% of the population here, the highest proportion of any state or territory in the country. The other is to meet with someone very important. Here's a bit more context. Aboriginal people have lived continuously in the Northern Territory for at least 40,000 years, having migrated from parts of Southeast Asia. It is estimated that between 35,000 and 70,000 of these Indigenous people were resident in the territory when the British began to establish military settlements in the early 19th century. Although no accurate counts of the Aboriginal population exist prior to the mid-20th century, the number of Indigenous people is believed to have dropped between the arrival of Europeans and the end of World War II, primarily as a result of disease, despair, and general neglect by the government. On a personal note, it saddens me that the people who created the Dreamtime, the font of power for the heavens themselves, should fall on such desperate times, being defined by a profound sense of loneliness and isolation. They are the world's oldest civilization, after all, the progenitors of the modern world. The good news, however, is that after World War II, the Indigenous population grew steadily, and by the early 21st century, the Aboriginal people made up more than 1/4 of the territory's total population. And that makes me feel somewhat better. But they should never have fallen so far in the first place. The aforementioned important person I'm here to meet is a man named Minjara, an elder who I'm quite happy agreed to meet with me at all. Magi has a database of Aboriginal elders and leaders across Australia as part of our research into the Dreamtime and those who may be descended from the dreaming ancestors, the creators of the Dreamtime. Minjara is believed to be one such person. By all accounts, he is a very reclusive individual, only talking with friends and immediate family members. Tracking him down was no small feat. He has no digital footprint to speak of, and there are no records of employment. He is essentially off the grid. Thankfully, Magi has ways of finding anyone, especially those who do not want to be found. Because, as far as Magi is concerned, in this day and age, there is no such thing as off the grid. I reached out to Minjara the same day I arrived in Darwin. I didn't talk to him directly, but I was able to talk to those closest to him. They kept giving me the proverbial runaround, saying he was unavailable or not home, but that they would give him my messages. I had already begun to give up hope that I would ever hear from him when days later I received a call from Minjara himself. Imagine my surprise when I heard his voice and confirmed it was indeed him. He said we should meet at one of his favourite spots for lunch, located on the waterfront. I eagerly agreed, though I tried, likely to no avail, to hide my excitement. I will now be able to fully begin my work in earnest, and that, to say the least, was a major first step. I am, however, quite curious why he agreed to meet with me after hearing nothing from him for days, especially knowing who I work for. I made that no secret. I guess I just have to see. And so, with great anticipation, I set out to meet with the elder Minjara, but I was not prepared for what happened next. I arrived at Oyster Bay early, getting a table out on the patio with a nice view of the waterfront. This allowed me some time to settle in, breathe and take in the surroundings. Darwin really is quite pleasant, and if I wasn't here on assignment I would very much like to tour the place and experience the city at my leisure. The menu at this particular place, however, was not necessarily to my liking. That's not to say it didn't look good, just that I'm not the biggest fan of seafood, which I know makes me an oddball. I'm more of a spicy food girl. Give me Indian food any day of the week and I'd be perfectly content. But with a chance to meet with an elder, I'll eat anywhere he wants. Well, mostly. When Minjara arrived, I was almost too relaxed. I had to get myself into the proper mindset again and remind myself why I was there in the first place. Minjara looked a little gaunt and unwell. He is a man in his late 60s, but seemed to be under stress if my initial assessment was accurate. He was short, about 5'6", but had a fluffy white beard and a full head of white hair, which really stood out against his dark brown skin. His eyes were sunken, but still contained what I call the remnants of a very ancient soul. I often found it hard to look at him for longer than a minute. I felt as though he could see right through me, and it was discomforting. "Miss Spencer, nice to finally meet you," he said softly as he sat down across from me. As I shook his hand, a pang of nervousness ran through me for some reason. To this very moment, I cannot explain why. I've met many important people throughout my career. Working for Magi brings all sorts of dignitaries through our offices, some official and some unofficial, all classified. But something about that handshake sent a jolt of energy through me that left my scientific mind wondering if I just imagined it, or if it was just my nerves getting the best of me. I'm choosing to believe the latter. Minjara and I made small talk for a bit, ordered food and chatted about Darwin and the waterfront, its history and the many changes to the area over the years. With the ice between us beginning to thaw, albeit slowly, I tried to shift to the actual topic of our meeting, the dream time. It turned out I didn't have to bring it up. Minjara did, abruptly, and he did so with a question. "I only agreed to meet with you because of who you are, certainly not because of who you work for. You are a descendant of William Baldwin Spencer, are you not?" I was taken aback by his directness. I half expected him to say he knew William personally, despite the fact that William was born over 160 years ago. I would not be surprised. The abnormal is the norm at Magi. "Yes, I am," I said, unsure of where he was going with this. "Your great-great-great-grandfather got a great many things about us right, and some things wrong. I gather you're here to pick up where he left off. You wish to know more about the dream time and how it can be used to stop a dream wakened who has escaped your organisation's custody. And your records show that I am a descendant of the dreaming ancestors. Am I right?" At this point, I thought it best to say nothing and just nod. He seemed to know enough already. Startlingly so. He took my silence as affirmation and continued. "Then, allow me to stop you right there. What is happening right now goes far beyond some dream wakened or even the dream time itself. This is about us. Me, my people, you, your people, and the dreamers and their people. I would even go as far to say this is about the gods themselves and all belief systems in the world." I asked what he meant by that. He elaborated only so much. He said, cryptically, this was about the end of all things, and the power to unleash the end times will not come from the dream time, but humankind itself. "Let me ask you," he said. "Magi was created long ago to study the dream time, yes? All the way back in the 5th century BCE. That's 2,500 years ago. In all that time, they don't know the origins of it?" I told him we have a working knowledge of it. We know some of its secrets, but the dream time is endless. It spans nearly the entirety of human civilization. What we don't know, we are relying on science to fill in the blanks. It is, after all, an energy system, creative energy that allows for the formation of thoughts and dreams, or at least it did before the manifestation wars. Since then, humanity has been, for lack of a better word, lacking. No one in the world today has the power to create, except the dream wakened we seek. Minjara's eyes seemed to glaze over as I told him all of this, as if you were telling someone a story from a tale they've heard countless times before. I leaned back in my chair and mustered up the courage to look at him directly in those ancient eyes and ask, "If none of that is accurate, I would be grateful to hear the truth." His answer was simple. "The dream time is crumbling. Time is not on your side. Magi will fall. The arbiters will bring ruin. There is great knowledge within your soul which must be preserved, Liara Spencer." Suddenly, a fog hit my mind. My eyes became heavy and I struggled to stay conscious. I remember grabbing the sides of my chair and trying to focus on Minjara as he began to blur. The world around me was fading rapidly, unravelling, first on the periphery, then directly in front. The last thing I heard was his voice, faint and growing distant, itself like a dream. "Tomorrow is the only choice we have. A new dream time must be built upon the knowledge your soul will convey to us. We will make sure of it. And then there was darkness.